With the release of the director's commentary for the Backrooms film, we got a pretty unique view into Kane's mind, his intent, and his process while he was working on the movie. We got hints at his future plans and breadcrumbs that help us to theorize where we may be headed next. A look behind the curtain at how certain effects were achieved, which does bring to light some interesting clarity to certain theories that both you and I have had. And a whole lot of fascinating details that I'm sure all of us in the community will continue to pour over from now on. But buckle up, dude. For our first stop, we're getting real deep into the sauce here. The green fluorescents. Okay, this one's gonna be really fun. I wanted to start with this because I, like many of you, fucking love these crazy technical details that might hint at motivations Kane had to make certain decisions in the narrative and the mythology, etc. So, when we dug into the green light as a narrative device or symbolism, quite a few of you really eagle-eyed folks noticed that the fluorescent tubes in Clark's store seemed to flash a pretty obvious green color when they started up. When I first watched the film, I completely missed that. So first of all, bravo to all of you. But what a cool community we have, you know? We're so hyper analytical, it's awesome.
Yeah, boy.
So I went way down the rabbit hole on this one, guys. And I did some really serious, actually serious research. And now with the director's commentary, we got info that makes it pretty evidently clear what's actually going on.
If you could be inside a lighted fluorescent tube, this is what might happen.
Okay, so there's a really cool combination of chemical reactions that cause fluorescent tubes to light up. What makes them unique is the argon gas and the mercury vapor that they're filled with. There's this high voltage starter that excites the mercury atoms and emits light. At that point, the only light that gets emitted from the tube is UV light, which of course we can't see. So they line the tube with a combination of phosphors that allow different wavelengths through and give you visible light.
Coils of specially coated tungsten wire bounce billions of electrons against the particles of mercury vapor which fill the tube. This impact results in invisible rays which strike the fluorescent powder on the walls, causing the tube to glow with light.
What I found super interesting is that the raw mercury vapor emits a super strong blue and green light, and you can actually see it. When that tube first flares up, there's a brief moment where that discharge appears that bluish green before the phosphors kick in and the white light takes over. It happens so fast that your brain just kind of corrects for it. But what's even cooler is what happens on camera. Those shitty camcorders in the 80s and the 90s had really primitive sensors that struggled so badly with white balance, as we know with that original Backrooms image, and the way that their frame rates interacted with the lamp's 50 to 100 hertz flicker rate. That made that green tint way more obvious on camera than it ever looked to the naked eye. Your brain naturally corrected for it in real life, but the camera couldn't. Now, on a typical Hollywood production, they're not using actual fluorescent tubes on set. When you're shooting, the director wants their grips and DP to have full control over that lighting on set, and the best way to do that is usually use lights like Astera Titans, which Kane's DP Jeremy Cox did use for the Backrooms set that they built on that soundstage in Vancouver. Okay, here's where it gets really cool. There is an exception. It turns out that they used real fluorescents for everything that they filmed in Clark's store because of course they were already there, installed in that Vancouver building that they shot in. So that means that the green flash that we get when the lights flicker in Captain Clark's was not meant to be the green light we see everywhere else in the film and in the series. It was just fluorescent lights doing fluorescent light shit. Knowing lighting and tile survey is Kane's favorite video is so cool because it makes me wonder if this phenomenon is where that choice of using green light to signify change in the complex came from. He's obviously obsessed with technical details of everything, which I appreciate. Now, I could be totally missing context here that shows that there's a different reason for why he chose green, right? Like, why green? Why not purple or blue? There might be more to it than that. And please correct me if I'm, going down the wrong path here, because I could just as well be looking too deep into it and there's no connection at all. I definitely acknowledge that. But it is really cool to theorize and think about that there may be a connection there. I think that's a lot of fun. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, consider this one case closed.
Sylvania tubes are the finest. Insist on fluorescent at its finest. By Sylvania.
Story details. Kane curiously wouldn't comment on the pills that Mary was taking, and I found that very interesting. Perhaps there's a simple face value explanation. It's possible that if he said they were, anxiety pills or antidepressants or got specific in any way, then we might cling to that and say, oh, since she was taking those pills, she obviously is suffering from this condition, and that's why she did this or that. And it takes away from the ambiguity, the theorizing of it all, which he knows we love, and I know he appreciates. Also, knowing too much can be a bit of a problem, especially in horror. It can flatten our interpretation of a certain moment or take away our ability to theorize and digest something on screen in our own way, which, like I said, is the fun part.
I think there's a responsibility to, let the art speak for itself and tell its own story.
So as we go through all of Kane's comments and try to understand how what he says affects the bigger picture, I do feel like it is important to keep that in the back of our minds. Sometimes not knowing is what keeps all of this interesting and fun, and not knowing and the mystery of the Backrooms, as we all know, is what makes it so great. Okay, so now that I just gave that whole speech about how sometimes not knowing is better for us and how that's what's fun about it, I am now going to complain about how I wish we knew more about Naren's bag. I was a little bummed Kane didn't comment on Naren's bag at all. I just have so many questions about how it ended up in the crawl space and what it contained. Now, we got a better look with the home release. We saw that there was a tape of something called the Lee Encounter Conference 1990, which must be a recording of a meeting they had about Marvin's encounter with the life form in Pitfalls, I assume, and also a floppy saying Ivan Beck something pathway backup V4. Makes me wonder, why did he need all that info and those recordings while on his expedition inside the complex? It does seem very out of place, right? What's cool is I think it could come up again in the future. Someone suggested in a comment, I'll post it below, that Naren could be spying for the Chinese, which I thought was a really cool out-of-the-box idea. Obviously, that could be way off the mark and is just wild speculation, but I like that it would explain, one, his decision to continue carrying the bag even in the face of death from Pirate Clark, and two, the idea that after he was killed, someone hid it in the crawl space maybe for retrieval later. With all the Chinese imagery we've been getting lately, bringing an adversarial government into the story with espionage and all that geopolitical stuff would be really cool. Kane mentions that all of his projects operate in some kind of continuity. It made me think, what could that mean? It seemed like he wasn't saying that they're in the same universe, per se, but that there was some kind of connection. It might just be the internet lore horror vibes that he's been doing with all of his stuff. But yeah, I don't know, maybe one of you has a better idea of what he meant. We get Kane saying, "This is a splendid shot," referring obviously to the shot of the sun in splendor image. It's not particularly significant, but I just loved the quick nod to something I know we've all spent a lot of time thinking about. We obviously know that image well, and we know that it represents something very important, and with the coronal mass ejections and the solar storms from the summer of '72 that led to the overflow events and all that stuff. I don't know, it was just a cool mention. Interestingly, Kane won't comment on the bodies coming out of the floor, but he says we can infer what they are. I mean, they're just still lifes, right? Like unfinished ones? We also see them in Found Footage 3 right in front of Waldad's house. It was strange to me that he wasn't interested in confirming that though. I assume just like every other situation, he doesn't like to make things too easy, like where's the fun in that? But I don't know, let me know if you think there's more going on here that I'm picking up on. Okay, super interesting context on why Clark keeps Kat's head in the fridge. Kane clarifies that Clark's intentions aren't malicious here.
I would lean Clark's motivations pertaining to Kat's head in the fridge are definitely not too malicious and are likely more the result of him experimenting and being hopeful that, like from the stuff he's observed while spending time in here, that, there's a good chance Kat will come back.
He mentions how this won't be revisited, so he's willing to explain further in this case. And I think a lot of people interpreted that scene wrong, understandably, myself included. And that just helps to reinforce the idea that he's not a terrible guy at his core. He's just flawed like everybody else and in incredibly poor mental health. But yeah, like he does tie Mary up and stuff, but that was really just a means to an end. I don't think he had any intention to kill her. It was more about getting something from her, about having that conversation, about, getting that satisfaction out of her about Barbara. I loved Kane's sentiment that Clark likely was just hoping, in his misunderstanding of how the complex works, that Kat would be, remembered by the complex and in a way bring her back. That context breaks my heart, dude. I think Clark really cared about his one and only employee, which, by the way, I do hope she won Employee of the Month every month. You would think she would, but you never know with Clark. And it does make me think that he likely felt guilty for Kat's death and by extension Bobby's and stuff. And yeah, so it makes sense. Okay, this one's cool. Kane specifically doesn't want to comment on the wind chimes. Okay, Mr. Pixels, we all know why, huh? The wind chimes are, up to this point, obviously a leitmotif that have been exclusively associated with Ivan Beck. You know, we hear them at the beginning of Overflow, we see and hear them in I Remember, and we hear them at the end of, Found Footage 2, when Beck is likely watching the footage back. The film is the first time we see or hear the wind chimes separate from Beck. It's possible that Kane's expanding their meaning, I suppose. Since Beck has amnesia, it's possible that they are associated with Beck just because they're really signifying memory in general, or memory of a specific moment, because why else would we hear them and even see them a few times while we're following Mary? By the way, speaking of wind chimes and their significance, that reminds me of something awesome I noticed. I had this crazy realization. I had to share this with you guys. It's just so fucking cool. Okay, so in the scene where Mary is about to enter the complex for the first time through the basement, she sticks her hand through the door, freaks out a little, and turns around and looks behind her. I remember watching that for the first time and thinking, that's a strange choice. Everything is a choice when you're making a movie like this. It's like, what was Kane trying to say there? Was it just nervousness, just checking her surroundings, checking if maybe Clark or someone was standing behind her, and then boom, it fucking hit me. She's looking for her mom, dude. So cool. Earlier in the movie, when we see, Mary's memory and she's reaching to open the window, which by the way is clearly referring to her terminology that she used in her marketing material for her book and with her patients, and probably where the idea came from originally too, which is very cool storytelling. And right when she's about to get a peek of the outside world, her sick mom runs up, preventing her from doing so. When Mary's about to step through the null zone and becomes trepidatious for a moment, she looks back behind her to check if her mom's going to show up in the same way and stop her. That is so cool. So cool, dude. I love it. Okay, this is super interesting. Kane makes a point to not say much about the final scene between Phil and Mary, but he does note that Phil's monologue, and by extension async, is meant to symbolize a more exaggerated version of human curiosity and our need to learn and understand things.
I'm very deliberately not saying a whole lot right now. However, this allows us to, use what is taking place canonically in the async timeline here as a sort of archetypal element of this obsession and this exaggerated form of the curiosity trait.
I remember talking about this in one of my videos soon after seeing the movie and thinking like, oh wow, there was so much emphasis and so much interest that I had after hearing Phil's monologue. He just seemed like he was addicted to it, right? That he needed more, that he was so fascinated by it. And it's just so cool to kind of get that extra clarity there, that that was his intention. It's supposed to be human curiosity, like that incessant need to grow or to learn or to expand, right? Your knowledge or whatever else. So yeah, it was just pretty fucking cool. The future. Let's take a look at Kane's comments about where the future may lead. Kane references the door to async, where the bag is, and says we'll understand more about it and what might be behind that door at some point in the next 30 years, which is funny.
The ever elusive handleless door that you don't get to see the other side of. At some point, I think people will have an understanding of the layout of this area. By some point, I mean some point in the next 30 years.
That is super interesting because I feel like he's hinting, at the potential limited series that he's always talked about, where we might view things from async's perspective, or even the sequel, right? Maybe even the next project. So that's just so exciting to get kind of a quasi confirmation of where we're headed in the future, even though we kind of already knew that angle was where we were going. It's cool to get that confirmed, and also to know that we're just seeing at least part of the film or the series would be the flip side of what we already know. So it's cool to tease us with that and then get more of it later. Technical details. Okay, here's a rapid fire of all the really cool filmmaking details that I thought were just too cool and interesting to leave out. So Kane ran around a mocap stage to play out Naren's cold open.
We actually put the camera in Kane's hand, so you were running around a motion capture stage, filming this based on your...
And I think it's something I want to lean into more going forward.
This is so cool because that opening sequence was done so incredibly well. The whole movie was, but that was a standout. There was parts of the movie that felt a little like it could be Blender. It just seemed a little more apparent that it was, but that did not. Kane said that his favorite shot is that POV pan, and I definitely understand why. It feels so real and like a cinematic version of what the reality of it would be. You know what I mean? Through our eyes, not through a camcorder, but if we were there. The eerie lighting and like the shadows, everything just feels so moody and perfect and perfectly emblematic of what the Backrooms is and how it feels. This is dope. Mary's mom's voice being strange in Mary's memory is just because they pitched down that entire soundscape, the Foley, the soundtrack, everything apparently, and even the dialogue, which is so interesting and I feel like unusual. So yeah, they dropped that 2 semitones, I believe it was, and that's just really cool. I love the confirmation that those establishing shots were actually shot in San Jose. I love my home. I miss it a lot. Yeah, that was really cool to see that. And even like talking about the Kelowna stuff, last week I've seen a few comments, if I can find them, I'll put them below, where people were saying like, it's so cool to like see my hometown referenced, you know, or mentioned, or where I live. And I'm like, I get it. I can sympathize with you. I totally understand. Am I the only one that missed the fact that the picture on the wall behind, you know, Clark's shoulder in the dinner scene was his photo with Barbara? That's such a cool detail, and I didn't even notice it. It was cool to learn that all the suited up async employees were just Kane's voice.
I will neither confirm nor deny. These are all my voice.
It's so true to what the series has been up to this point. And then even in Everything Must Go, he plays another one. Like, it's just such an awesome, like, all these people are just somehow the same guy, and I love it. Oh, another fun fact. Apparently the bearded still life tastes like a California roll that's been left out in the sun. That's disgusting.
Ugh. Brother, ugh.
Oh yeah, and one last thing for all you guys that stuck around to the end, in case you haven't noticed already, when Clark enters the crawl space, he hits his head. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, so thank you for spending it here with me. Thank you so much for all the growth that the channel's gotten, and all the kind words, and all the support, and all the friends we made along the way. Like, I like you guys a lot. I think you guys are really cool, and I appreciate that you're just as into this shit as I am. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It means more than you could ever know or that I could ever express. So all I can say is thank you. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.